When I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing. I wish I was home, I wish I was back there with the things I've been knowing.
Hi, my name is Larry White, and I am your producer and director of The Inner Beat. The Inner Beat is a socially conscious program that sometimes showcases cultural events as well as community events. And occasionally, we'll even bring you a little song and dance. So sit back and enjoy The Inner Beat.
In the African psychology, we have a responsibility for the children. We cannot abdicate that responsibility. No intelligent people abdicate the education of their children to the historical oppressor. And Dr. Clarke asked that question. Do you feel that the oppressor is going to develop an educational system that's going to bring you a pedagogy of liberation? And that's still the question to ask today. Where is the pedagogy of liberation? Dr. Clarke spoke to that pedagogy of liberation, and you heard Dr. McIntosh describe what it was. He was so knowledgeable that he could go among any people and by his wisdom and by their words teach them. Very often, our young people will say that they don't want to work for the man. And so you see them begging on the street, or you see them unemployed because they don't want to work for the man. But in this time and age in which we live, in this society which is not agricultural, my father-in-law built every house that he lived in. When he took his family to California, he built the house. He raised the food, he raised the vegetables, he had chickens, he had pigs, he had pigeons. He also had the ability to provide everything that they needed. When more children came, he put an extra room on the house. So we had a certain amount of independence. We don't have that any longer. You cannot build your house. You can't even rent it with the price that it is today. You have to have a job. You cannot raise your vegetables. You can't have chickens and pigs in your yard. So our young people have to understand that in this society in which we live today, it's not an agrarian society. Therefore, you have to have the means to survive as a human being. And Dr. Clarke worked in the highest echelons of white academia. But he didn't lose his way. And that's one of the things that I talk about to young teachers, the ability to straddle those two worlds. He was a supreme model of being able to straddle those two worlds. The world's out there that's hostile, he knew that it was hostile. He understood the nature of the oppressor, and he also worked in that world, teaching his own and teaching the oppressor, and at the same time keeping his basic African consciousness. And Dr. Smith has done that, and there are others among us who have been able to do that and not lose our way. It's our responsibility to teach this to our young people. I don't want them all to be in Fortune 500 companies, but if they're there, I want them to know how to function in that Fortune 500 company or in that white world and keep their African consciousness and at the same time strengthen those who come along behind him. He did that. I think also he changed the academy. The academy is different after Dr. Clarke has been there. And I can recall when I was considering the possibility of becoming a member of the Board of Regents, there were a few people that I consulted about, is this what I should do? I was very, very perplexed about the decision to come back from Cambridge, where I was at Harvard trying to do some writing, come back to New York to be a regent. And Dr. Clarke was one of the people who gave me the most wisdom in terms of how to function there. He said, don't be discouraged when you don't change them, but make sure they know that you're there. And that was profoundly important, because sometimes when we go into these arenas, we really think, oh, I'm going to speak the truth and people will change. They will understand that it's not the children that's failing, it's the schools that's failing. I thought that they would. I had that naivete. But you won't change them. Now, why is that? It's because they can't change. They have too much at stake. They can't confront the lies. They can't confront the myths. They can't confront the hypocrisy. How would they explain it? How would they explain the fact that nothing that Europe needed did Europe have? No oil, no uranium, no gold, no rubber, no diamonds. All that Europe needed, all that the United States needed, all that Japan needed, was at the continent of Africa. They weren't willing to negotiate for it. They went in and took it. And in taking it, destroyed the people. So it was a dual act, not only to rob the earth, the bowels of the earth, of the richness that would keep their industrialized society going, but also to rob the people, take those people and make them do the work. How could they explain that? How could they explain chattel slavery? How could they explain the myth of inferiority when we are the people who built the roads, the buildings, the underground passageways? If you look at the history of the development of the subway system, you will see how many people of African ancestry were involved in developing the subway system here in New York. We know now about Wall Street. We know about the African burial ground now. But
Wake up everybody, no more sleeping in bed, no more backward thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be.